You saw levitation, correct?
Yeah, one of the first cases we had was
Can you describe the worst one you've ever seen?
the body turns into a spider and tries to climb up a wall backwards.
You've seen that. You said there's 9 stages to possession?
Well, there's 3 primary. So you have ordinary and extraordinary diabolic activity. The ordinary activity is temptation, the stuff that we deal with all the time. Until probably 30 minutes after I'm dead, I'm still gonna be tempted by, that cherry pie or whatever, So
What kind of temptation?
What's that?
What kind of temptation?
Diabolic temptation. I was joking about cherry pie. I like cherry pie, but you know what I mean. So temptation is the ordinary, and it, part of being in the spiritual life, part of being a Christian is dealing with temptation. A temptation to anything, name it: anger, lust, infidelity, impurity, theft, whatever. The demon's going to constantly whittle away. That's the ordinary. The analogy that I use is, you remember in Vietnam, they would set, I don't know if you guys still did, but they would set up the wire. They would string claymore mines around, And so the wire represents kind of the interiority of self. And the temptation, the demon's still outside the wire. And then you've got increasing levels of extraordinary diabolic activity. And it's oppression, obsession, and then possession. And each one of those has marked signs, 3 marked signs of movement towards a full-blown possession. But the ordinary is temptation, and the extraordinary is oppression, obsession, possession. And oppression level is normally along in temporal goods, relationships, finances, vehicles, and, temporal things. And then as it grows down the spectrum, it becomes more interior, and the demon becomes more present to the person as he takes more ground. They surrender more ground. It's very much like trench warfare in many ways. As the demon takes more ground, he becomes more interior, more present to them. They become, just like, the church lady. You have a conversion experience, and suddenly you're helping out the church, you're telling everybody about it, like, man, God did all these great things for me, and you're broadcasting and telling everybody, and the opposite, you're doing the opposite. You're putting up, if you're Catholic anyway, you're putting up pictures of Our Lady of Guadalupe and a crucifix over here, and you've got St. Benedict over here, whatever. They're starting to take down any religious objects. They're putting up more secular stuff. They're starting to broadcast. They're doubting God, so you start to see this inversion. And then spiritual obsession, the demon starts moving in. He's setting up. He's starting to control things a lot more, increasingly. And possession, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's very rare, but it's done when, if he doesn't have to, he's not going to, for the most part. And so obsession is more common than possession. And the danger of not ferreting out the psychological, people got to understand, is that a psychological obsession can open you to a spiritual oppression or even spiritual obsession, just to a psychological obsession, because the demon feeds off that. He takes advantage of that psychological obsession, whether it's addiction to pornography, or, I'm not saying if you're addicted to pornography, you're possessed, but any psychological obsession can expose, you're just vulnerable. You got a whole flank that's wide open and nobody's covering it.
How do they get in?
A couple of things. One is wounds, trauma. Another is, the demon.
Physical trauma?
Psychological trauma.
Psychological trauma.
Psychological trauma. Yeah, psychological trauma. They feed off those wounds, their vulnerabilities, and of course the demon enters through sin. And as I put it in the book, the demon enters through sin, but he holds in heresies, believe it or not, even in false beliefs. He can hold on those heresies. We always see that. So, but it's usually some psychological trauma or sin, deep, especially grave sin. Even especially the really wicked sins, in our experience, we've seen that has diabolic accompaniment.
What is that?
There's a demon present.
What's an extreme sin?
Incest, sexual trauma, sexual abuse, rape, that sort of thing.
What is what is the demon's goal?
Take you to hell.
But there's lots of sinners. Why do they pick these specific people? I mean, what are some of the people that we were talking about? Abramovich. I mean, is she possessed? Or
Well, I mean, I think if you're working specifically in that field, you're probably uncontestedly possessed, yeah. But they're working on all of us. Father Morth. I think I mentioned earlier, the demon told him, if you could see our numbers, we would darken the sun. My name is Legion, for we are many. So they're just constantly whittling away, working at it, the perception. That's why I think you ought to watch Nefarious, because you start to see diabolic psychology, the way he whittles away, what he's looking for, the vulnerabilities he's looking at. But he has no rights. That's what he's going to say. I have a right to you. No, you don't. If you're baptized by right, your soul belongs to Jesus Christ. That's it. But he takes permissions, If you give him permissions to behaviors, he'll take that. And that will be his entry point. That make sense?
kind of?
Yeah.
By giving him permissions, you mean by
Your actions.
acting on temptation?
Yeah. Sinful behavior. Yeah.
What are some of the things that you've seen during exorcisms? You saw levitation, correct?
Yeah, one of the first cases we had was levitation, all but tips of the toes and the tips. I mean, physically impossible, to elevate as if there was a rope pulling everything off the ground except for tips of the fingers and tips of the toes.
You've seen that.
Yeah.
How did that feel?
You're just so focused on mission, you're not thinking about it. You're just praying. You're doing your job, But yeah, I've seen the priest starts praying, and the lady's sitting in a folding chair in the room about this size. One bound slides all the way from this wall to that wall.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was just like, just like you're cool. You know what I mean? You're a SEAL. I was a helicopter pilot. You flew with a lot of guys, and no matter what happens, they're always cool. So on the outside, I'm always like, just doing nothing shakeless. On the inside, I was like, dude, you got to do that again. That was wow. Yeah. But I mean, I joke, but yeah, it's some of the stuff. It's just wow.
What are they saying when you're performing the exorcism? The
Yeah, sometimes
possessed person.
Yeah, when we talk about what the demon's saying or manifestation, what happens is the demon appropriates the senses of the person. And so they take, again, the demon, properly speaking, possesses the body, and they appropriate their senses, sight, hearing. They traffic into senses. Some are sensitive to different things. I can't tell you how many times you can't hear it, but I've got Gregorian chant going right now. I can't tell you how many times I would do an intake and they'd say, "Can you turn that music off?" I'm like, "What music?" It's coming out of your pants, or your jacket. I'm like, so I put it up. And I'll crank it up. You mean this? And I'll crank it up real loud. No, I'm not going to turn that off. It's aggravating something inside of me. Like, wow, okay. I'm not turning it off. I've seen it one time for example, music, Gregorian chant, which is the chant of monks, okay? Catholic monks, Benedictine monks, praying ancient prayers. Gregorian chant goes back to the 500s, Gregory the Great is when it kind of started. So maybe 600. And so the priest says, okay, let's basically get the party started, So I have the Te Deum, which is an ancient Gregorian chant. Te Deum laudamus, we praise you, God. And it's the chant of the choirs of angels chanting before the throne of God. Okay. And so I just hold it up. And as soon as the demon was kind of stoic, and as soon as he hears the Gregorian chant, immediately starts manifesting. And then the priest jumps in and does the exorcism. And then the next week I thought, I'm going to be smart because I'm a smart guy, you know. So I played something else, the Dies Irae. They played on Good Friday, the Day of Wrath. So I want to play that one as being a smart guy. So I just held that up, and the demon just went like this and looked at me and just looked at Father, and nothing happened. So I was like, man, I wonder what happened. So I look on the iTunes. The first one was chanted by the Benedictine monks of Santo Domingo de los Silos in Spain. And then the second one was the Westminster Choir of Lay People. So the demon knew it's not just the words or the sound, it's where it's coming from, the heart of the church, the monastic heart of the church of chant. The demon could tell the difference.
Wow.
Pretty incredible, you know. So they traffic in the senses, you know.
But what do you do when you have a possessed person levitating?
Oh, the priest stops it.
Stops what?
Yeah.
The exorcism?
No, he just, hey, stop that. Yeah.
How long does it take?
Usually an hour and a half. Sometimes I've been in there 3 hours, you know, but so different other times I've seen other guys, like I read it somewhere in the Catholic news about a couple of years ago. A lady manifested at Mass, and 3 priests grabbed her, took her to a chapel, and prayed over her for 9 hours straight or something. But that doesn't help. It's just going to light stuff up. You're just going to use a lot. You're going to blow through a lot of brass. But yeah, they're not. Generally speaking, they're not going to be ready for that. You know. So hour and a half until they're done.
Can you describe the worst one you've ever seen in detail?
Yes and no. I mean, levitation, the manifestations are terrible. The most glorious things are the conversions and the holiness that they grow in. But levitation, the body turns into a spider and tries to climb up a wall backwards.
You've seen that.
Yeah. But those are fairly rare. You know, they happen.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.